All right, it's a beautiful Tuesday morning. Wow, thank you so much for joining us once again. We're back with the biggest breakfast show in the land, the Big Sunrise Breakfast Show, and I'm your host, Keith Mwemba. Like every other morning, we're brought to you with the association of Baitware, www.baitware.co.zm. And if you want to increase your chances of winning, obviously you need to bait more and more and more. There's so many games, and you could be an instant millionaire. Only visit their website. Now, this morning, obviously we get to have a different number of, dishes, like we call them on the breakfast show. And, of course, different stories and headlines that we have that are making big headlines across the country. And this is what we're going to have this morning. But to start with, we have Onechi, who's an actor, film producer, and also a writer, to just get to look at this particular industry as we get to go along. Onechi, good morning, and welcome back to Muvi.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be back. You know, I always feel at home here. But the viewers may or may not know, I think the last time I was on here at Muvi TV was about 6 years ago.
Wow.
And at that time, I was celebrating being the first Zambian to present a television show on U.S. network television. And that was 6 years ago. And then today, Zambians are doing so many more amazing things in the entertainment industry. So I look forward to what the story will be 6 years from now. So it's good to be
beautiful.
here.
Now getting back from, tracking back that time 6 years ago,
Yes.
how's been the transition from that up to where we are now?
Phenomenal. I mean, 6 years ago was also an important milestone for me because I kick-started my career as a director, and I transitioned more to behind the camera, and so I've also grown exponentially, been able to direct and had great experiences directing talent like Kenneth Kaunda, or Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex,
Yeah.
and I've been able to work with a lot of international agencies as well, and writing, directing, and producing, and we actually picked up an Ngoma Award along the way,
Beautiful,
which was
congratulations.
phenomenal. Yeah, so thank you very much. And so and then also, of course, so much is going on, but I think the burden for me in my heart is that we can be doing even more. And so 6 years on, I'm still very hungry. I still feel the way I felt when I started, which, funny enough, I started my career as an actor associated to Muvi.
Yeah.
I did my first TV commercial for Muvi Studios in 1999. So Mr. Nurenda gave me my first gig. So this will always feel like home for me.
All right, great. Now I think you've given us a perspective, from a personal point of view.
Yes.
How about the general industry of entertainment in Zambia? How have you looked at it at the time you were joining, and with your journey? How do you look at it?
So much opportunity. There's been a lot of growth. Our technical capacity has grown. With digital filmmaking,
Right.
The entry point is cheaper. However, I feel there is more and I want to expand on this because I said there should be more that has to happen. And I'm looking at what's going on in the region, and Zambia is a wonderful country that's peaceful with a great climate, and all kinds of locations, and we have stuff like the Victoria Falls. What we need to be doing is to be creating synergies with more established film industries like Hollywood and Nollywood and Bollywood Asia. I'll give you an example. Mad Max Fury Road, which came out several years ago, they shot most of that in the desert in Namibia. And I know that the filmmakers left tens of millions of dollars in the local economy.
Yeah.
When you watch a big budget movie today, at the end it says, this movie supported the creation of 10,000 jobs.
Wow.
My question to you is, how many people are employed by a mine? If you do the math, our turnover from film can actually rival or even surpass minerals. But that all comes down to it being a policy point for government.
Exactly.
So like those of us who are working in the business today, of course we're entrepreneurs and, but we actually need to be supported by actual policy legislation. It needs to be a priority for lawmakers because if you want an industry to grow, we need concessions, we need a few things to get us going when we need to create these synergies, which might be difficult to do on our own as individuals, but when we have that backing, the potential is exponential. And we have an alumni of the entertainment industry, as a Minister of Youth and Sport.
Oh, yeah.
And I've actually had the great pleasure of having...
PS?
Yes, yeah. I've had the great pleasure of having worked with him. So, you have the right people in the right place.
Exactly.
But then we have stuff like the film policy, which for the last, I believe, 5 years plus has just been deliberation and deliberation. I don't think it's a very long document. We need to get that process going. So that's really, but even with what we do have, we're doing so much. So much more can be done if we're backed up in the right way.
And to your maybe approximation or your views, to what extent can the entertainment industry, get to grow the Zambia's economy?
Well, like I said, by a very considerable margin. I was reading a document that this was written about 2017 or 2018 that said in that year the Nigerian film industry had contributed about 1.2 or 2% to the GDP of Nigeria.
Right.
Now, this is an oil-rich nation. I think one of the richest. I think should be like the richest country in Africa. No, that should be South Africa. Anyway, should be in the top 5.
One of the biggest economies in Africa.
The biggest economies in Africa.
Yeah.
Thank you. And film contributed 1 to 2% of that. Now, when you break down the numbers, it's huge. And again, the way that we leapfrog our progress is to coordinate and collaborate with the established film industry. So that's the strategy. So we entice these Hollywood, established filmmakers to come shoot their movies in Zambia. The labor cost is cheaper. We have a stable climate. And South Africa figured this out in the 90s. So movies like the Avengers movies, the Marvel movies, and big Netflix movies, they all get shot in Cape Town. And they'll use Cape Town as a stand-in for Los Angeles.
All right.
Now you can imagine a movie like Jumanji, or a movie where there's the jungle or there's bush. That can be done in Zambia. And when these people come to shoot here, they will also train our locals. And so the skills transfer is direct.
Yeah.
There is money being poured into the economy. And it's a contributor because minerals are kind of seasonal, as we've observed from...
And with time, they fade out.
True. And from the time Zambia gained independence until now, we've always had the copper price will boom, we go on a huge infrastructure drive, and then the copper price drops, and then the economy goes. And it's been up and down ever since. And, the country is over 50 years old. We need to innovate some new strategies. And I feel like film and entertainment can be a very, very key part of that. And one thing I'm always inspired by is Zambians who are doing incredible things in the space. We have Zambian actors who are doing incredible things in Hollywood, like Akende Munalula.
Yeah.
You've got Zambians doing amazing things in music with Sampa the Great, performing at Coachella, which is enormous for music globally. Yeah. So there are a lot of Zambians who are actually doing pretty cool and interesting things. So we have capacity, it can be done. And you know what's interesting? I've always been, from the time I started, I've always been interested in taking on projects that push and innovate, because I'm all about, my personal ethos is about pushing boundaries and expanding. So I'll give you an example. As an actor, I haven't done much acting in the last few years, but I over Christmas we filmed a new TV series, and it's called My Family Wahala. And what's cool about this is that it's kind of like the first Zambian scripted sitcom, situational comedy, and it with Zambian comedy, we've always been more about the physical, more like the Mr. Bean kind of, the physical kind of slapstick is what they call it. But we kind of looked back at stuff like, the style of The Cosby Show, Family Matters, mind your language,
Great.
you know, keeping up appearances, faulty towers.
Faulty Towers, yeah.
So we try to, you know, it's that tone of comedy. And there's this incredible Zambian woman named Ellen Akubanda, and she wrote it, and she's the showrunner, and she, you know, she's written books, you know, she's a internationally published author, you know, and she wrote the most amazing story. It's just so brilliant, and even when I read it, I'm like, wow, you know, and it's great to see that Zambians can innovate, and so the capacity is there, and you see it all the time.
It's brilliant. I know you've spoken of how you'd always want to break out the barriers.
Yes.
And indeed, you broke out the barriers way back when you were starting. The film industry wasn't, you know, an industry in Zambia which was very inviting and all that not. But you guys decided to, you know, take up the mantle and start it. What made you? What enticed you? What were you thinking to get into, you know, this particular industry?
Two things: passion and trust in God. Because today it's a bit more logical if somebody says, I want to do music, because you've got Mackie 2, you've got Sampa the Great. But back then, because in the old days, acting was something considered to be done by people who failed in school. So you failed in life, so you do Sowero, whatever they call it, like acting, and, you know. So at that time, to kind of be serious and tell people to say, I want to actually, you know, act or be a filmmaker, it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
you failed
go,
anyway.
go to school, get an education, and get a government job. But, you know, belief, and because, you know, I'm also an author, and and my book Love the Death of Me, my first poetry anthology, is available on Amazon. Shameless plug, sorry.
I need to check it out.
Yeah, but, you know, I took 15 years to write my first book, and, you know, in that process, you realize that you're channeling energy, like God communicates through you, and that's what we artists do. We traffic in light. We interact with the unseen, the intangible, and we bring it to life. And I think it's a cultural issue, because in the Southern Hemisphere, I've noticed that we believe in things that we can touch, what's tangible.
Yeah.
But in the Northern Hemisphere, their culture is to believe in the unseen. So somebody will say, I'm going to innovate a new product. And then that company is able to get investors. You raise billions of dollars, and then you go into production. You don't even have it yet, but then eventually you make it, because people believe. And so I think that's kind of really what it is. It's just about believing. And through sheer force of will, and a whole industry has been born. And it couldn't have been possible without different people. It's God playing chess. You bring all these people together. Had it not been for Muvi, I would have probably be where I am today, or I would have taken a very different path.
All right. Let's get to look at now some young people that may also now looking up to you. Obviously, you guys are doing great things, and you know, the youngsters are always looking up to you. How do they choose these particular careers? Is it because they also need to get to, you know, choose by getting this particular avenue, or they should maybe, you know, if they are done with something else, or if they fail at something else, this is when they should join in? At what point should they get into this?
I love that question because it's one question I get asked a lot. Like, how do you get in? How do you start? There are two things. Number one, it's train. Become better. That is possible now thanks to the advancements in communication technology. You can find courses online that'll be cheap. Some are even free. You can, whatever you want to do, production, post-production, behind the camera, in front of the camera, you can learn and study a skill set. And secondly, the most interesting part about the journey is that it's not as defined as more academic careers. If you want to be a chief accountant, you know you have to do accountancy courses, you need to work a certain number of years, you need to rise in the ranks, and then you become...
Yes.
But what we do is all about being seen by the right people, because it just takes one person to believe in you to advance your career forward.
There.
So that is the interesting part about how to get yourself seen by the right people. But when you and different things work for different people. When I was starting, it was a whole different ball game as to now you have TikTok, now you have all these different
Instagram.
avenues.
Yes.
You know, it's a bit easier, and things that there are brands which are more visible. Somebody can actually walk up to Movie TV and come with and say, I want to be a presenter, I want to be an intern. You know, so there are different ways that you can do it. But I am all about the next generation, and I love to meet with and interact with people who want to start. And I feel like at this point, after 20 years of doing this, I feel like that's really where my heart is, about empowering and uplifting the next generation.
Right.
And I love to see it. Like that comedy show I was telling you about, we have some incredible new Zambian actors in it, and they've never been in anything before. But you watch the performances, and they are
Absolutely amazing.
outstanding. And you're like, wow, this gives me hope for the future.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I want to also hear from you. What have been some of the best projects or some of the best works that you look behind and say to, like, all right, that one? Yes.
Oh, my favorite projects. Things that I'm proud of. Directing Kenneth Kaunda and that was shortly before he passed on.
Right.
That was huge. I have a crazy story. So we're on set and we're shooting at his house. And KK walks in, and I don't get starstruck easily because I've met a lot of famous people all around the world. But when he walked in, I was like stunned. And you're the director, so you have to snap out of it and get on with the work. Now he was portrayed as being kind of frail toward the end, but he was mentally so sharp and astute. He walks in and he takes a seat on the chair, and we did a run through of the lines, and we did our first take. And I'm like, as he's talking, I'm like, it's Kenneth Kaunda.
This is KK.
In front of my lens.
Okay.
And then when he finishes the first take, he looks me dead in the eye and he says, was that good? Was that good enough? Should I do it again? And I'm like, you just breathing is fine. And I'm like, yes, one more take. And so we did a few run-throughs, and so that was a pretty awesome experience, and it's kind of hard to top KK, but I have a few exciting projects that I'm working on as well now, and I can't wait when they're ready. Hopefully you'll have me back and I can share them with you.
Definitely, you're getting back, as once you get back home, you are back home
It's
for
good
good.
to be here.
And I think as we get into wind up our conversation, how can people access your works? Like I heard some people that you are inspiring. How can they access your works, your handles, and everything else?
Thank you. Well, we have a website. It's onechi.tv. And I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I can be reached on those platforms as well.
Onechi.tv, that's the website. And
Yes.
with the handles on Instagram?
Oh, right.
on
Oh,
Twitter
yes.
and,
On Facebook, it's Onechi, /Onechi. Instagram and Twitter, it's Onechi777.
All right. Onechi777.
Yes.
All right. Well, Onechi, thank you so much, for making an appearance. And
it's a pleasure.
welcome back once again.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be on, and like I mentioned, we have this new comedy coming up. I really hope everybody gets a chance to watch it. It's premiering June 17th, 1930 on Zambezi Magic.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
But please tune in, and
Sure.
the journey continues.
Definitely. All right, so it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, great. So we've been speaking with a writer and also a producer from the film industry, Onechi Lwenje, as we're getting to look at, the Zambian film industry, which has been, of late, doing very, very well. And like he said, plus many other great minds, to say the industry has a lot to offer, and we can only tell with time. For now, we take a very short break, and on the other side, we get to continue, obviously, with the other stories that we have this morning. Till next.
is as Lwangeni is a sporting area. There are some games that are going on right now. Leagues have started, tournaments have started.